Hello and welcome to this episode of Guest Practices. I'm joined by Sunil Narang. Sunil is the President and CEO of WDHB, a world leader in learning expeditions for senior executives. These executives can experience different industries, cultures, countries and ways of working, and they learn from that, discuss it, apply it to their own strategies and tactics, and it informs transformation and innovation of their own businesses. Sunil is a regular speaker and facilitator at conferences on strategy, innovation and transformation for companies across the globe. And he's even a passionate facilitator of WDHB's tailor-made learning expeditions themselves. For this episode, we talk about why modern leaders need to perhaps unlearn and relearn the new traits and skills for the modern workplace. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Guest Practices, and we'll be talking about leading in the modern workplace. And to join me is a CEO, an entrepreneur, a founder, all the way from Denver, Colorado, Sunil Narang. Sunil, thanks for joining me.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
Well, the pleasure's all mine, and thanks for waking up early this morning, your time, to make it for this cast. And maybe we can start by you telling us a little bit about yourself, your business, and your passion.
Sure, absolutely. So for the last 17 years, I'm based in Colorado. But before that, have spent many years in the corporate world, in the oil field services and telecom industry, having worked and lived in 6 countries and managed about another 30, 40 of those. I've kind of seen pretty much all sides of the corporate world. And having embarked on that journey, at one point I thought of leaving the corporate world and starting something where we can have a small impact on leadership, on change, and on people development. And that got me involved with WDHB about 11 years ago. So that's a bit about me. And what do? We in WDHB, we create business impact by developing attitudes, capabilities, and behaviors that keep the companies ahead or organizations ahead of competition. We believe also 2 elements that are generally missing in a learning journey of a company or leaders is the emotional element and the cultural element. And in our mind, the gold standard is to choose emotionally engaging, tied to culture formats, such as experiential learning. So for the last 32 years, WDHB has been involved in shaping the world of or future of experiential learning. And what we also believe is that emotional and cultural side of learning, or you bring those elements in, they make learning more sustainable because you relate to it a bit longer. So having said that, how do we do it? We create very immersive programs where you learn from people who are in that world. And our tagline or what we strongly believe in is world is our classroom. You can learn from anyone, anywhere, big or small. And that's the main foundation of our programs of immersive learning, which creates a lot of divergent thinking. But through our facilitated processes and our own methodology, we try to converge learning so that there are some very sustainable takeaways and action items that there is a return where people can actually further implement those. So that's in a nutshell what WDHB does. And one other thing I would like to add is learning doesn't come from today's world. Learning comes from the past too. So when we acquired Experience to Lead in October of last year, we learned the art of holding programs from historical events, such as Apollo program, or based on the music industry, or even based on Olympians, gold medal winners, of how do you get inspired and learn from outside your world. So that combination gives us a learning attitude of past and the present, and the whole wide range of where we can learn from. A passion of mine is very simple. A passion of mine is all about human centricity. As in your world, Jeremy, one of your country's leader actually said, you can train people so that they can leave, but you can treat them well and they'll stay. And that is Richard Branson. And I strongly believe in that. And so it's all about human centricity. And I think most of my decisions are based on our team, our people. How can we address them? Especially last year when we were in the COVID world and our business had come to a complete standstill. Contribution from the team, we tend to survive. And obviously the second passion is about our clients. It is all about them. Is how do we bring value to their process? How do we keep them engaged? How do we improve on their learnings? And last but not the least, how do we up the show every minute? So we learn from all our opportunities that we get. We co-create programs with our clients. So if you want to talk about my passion, it's the team and it's the client.
Okay, then, Sunil. So what do we expect from our leaders in the modern workplace as we look to the decade ahead?
Yeah, sure. So, that's a very interesting question. And the reason I say that is we don't know what holds for us a decade down the road. We didn't even know a month down the road what COVID's going to hold for us. So I think it's not necessarily planning about the decade ahead. It's being original as a leader. Being able to be very authentic as a leader. And one of the things that I talk a lot about is to keep things very simple. And in the COVID world, or even in today's world, or how it is advancing, we may not be able to have the same work environment that existed in the past, even year before last. And how do you get away from all the Zoom calls and people calls? You hear everything about people wanting to not have a Zoom electronic day or a digital day in a week and things like that. But I think what's really missing is for a leader to be really authentic, a leader to be really have enhanced transparency, be able to unite the team together, to have sort of a North Star, if you want to call it, about core values of the company and your own core values and some of the cultural beliefs, because especially in a company like WDHB, which is a very small global company, it becomes more challenging to understand the culture and then relate to it because you deal with it on a daily basis. So I think one other thing we always expect our employees to, and we hear a lot about, is show loyalty. What about a reverse loyalty? What about us leaders showing loyalty to our folks? And standing by them and helping them go through the journey, because if it's a tough journey for us, it's a tough journey for them. And we need to be able to have that, a word that is used quite a bit, I'll use it again, empathy towards our folks. So I think simplicity, being authentic, being transparent, and also being very, very respectful to everybody's environment. The world is changing so fast. And our whole environment is changing. You don't go to the office anymore. The other day, I was reading somewhere that the traffic jams are now during the afternoon, when parents are taking time off from the Zoom calls, picking kids up and running errands during the day, not in the morning, not in the evening. The whole world is changing on us, and we need to change as leaders to keep things real. So that would be, and I think it creating a sense of belonging to the company and focusing towards the purpose, I think binds the team together.
Can you bring out any examples of leaders or companies getting that right and the kind of benefits that they're realizing by doing so?
Sure. I think I would love to, there are leaders who've been doing things really inspirational and inspiring. And I would love to step back a little bit in the past before we come to the present. I mean, some of the leaders that have inspired me quite a bit is a person like Sakichi Toyoda. And he started in a loom business and then invested his money, a little bit of money that he had by selling his copyrights, in his son's startup automobile company called Toyota. And now you know where that company sits. Every leader, when you name a leader, you always think, did the leader have anything negative about themselves, or was it all positive? I think we all have both sides of it, negative and positive. But these are some of the inspirational stories that bring things forward. And in that environment in 1924 or 1930, Japan was not where Japan is today, but he took that step going forward. And those are the lessons we can learn. One other person who inspires me from the past is Lee Iacocca. The way he was moved from Ford, the way he moved to Chrysler. But I think I read his autobiography when I was in high school. And it still resonates with me with some of his management lessons in it. It's how do managers or leaders lead from behind and not be instructional. And I think, and if you come to the current world, somebody really impresses me because we had a chance to visit the company during one of our expeditions is Ursula Burns. She was the first African-American CEO. And if you think about it, she was the CEO of a company that was on its way down at a very fast pace called Xerox. And she turned the company around. She left Xerox in 2017. But if you look at the inspirational story, and nothing more than what she has done, but when we were visiting Xerox, what the employees talked about her. And that's a true leader. And now when you come to the current world and you see leaders who are inspiring, they're doing things differently, I think that tools are wider. They've got more tools, more opportunities to communicate, but not in the same constrained world. So I think humanity brings the leaders forward. So I would stay with people like Ursula and Lee and Toyota-san, because that's where the inspiration comes from. The simplicity comes from, and just the whole art of bringing teams together, because Xerox turned a corner with Ursula's effort. And I think that was very impressive. So I hope I've answered your question. I didn't go into the current leaders, but I still stayed at the old leaders. So.
Yeah, well, the simplicity, as you talked about, the humanity which is being demonstrated, and getting the balance right between the business needs and the needs of the people seem to be where the gold is mined and where the magic happens. So, and probably this is a tougher question maybe, what are the warning signs then to look out for when leaders are getting it wrong?
The warning signs are happening all the time. Yes, it is a tough question because the warning signs happen internally and externally. We all talk about as leaders to be inspirational and lead the way, the way the definition goes. However, you see signs internally and externally. Externally, you've seen signs basically on, if your revenue is dropping or your clients are going away, that's an external sign. But the internal sign is also about employees or your team members not wanting to put in their 100%. And what I typically say is when we becomes I or me, that's a sign. That's where people start really covering themselves up and they start getting very defensive. How many times have we, if we as leaders stand up and say, and put our hand up and say, I made a mistake. Once the employees keep saying that, it's a good sign that the team is gelling together. But as soon as the employees start being defensive or start covering yourself or themselves up, and honestly, I've seen things happen in the past, it really becomes very focused to myself as an individual. Don't get me wrong, that is important. That is an important element, but there is a fine balance between it. And we is equally important than just the I. And you see the signs. You see I, you see me, you see why not me? And those elements make it very challenging. And I think those are first signs that things are not where they should be.
Yes, I'd agree. And we start to become more isolated, don't we? And particularly now we're hearing so much more about the we, not the me, the stronger together, all of those things. And it does really point towards that some leaders potentially need to unlearn some of their old habits and mindsets, maybe that have informed the past. We can learn from the past for sure, but the modern workplace is rapidly evolving. So perhaps some of the modern leadership and some of their teams may have to relearn some of the knowledge, skills, and particularly behaviors, which help us mine that gold that we were talking about before and avoid some of those traps. So the organization has to evolve with it. And part of the organization is around human capital management. It's also around learning and development. So what role does HR or learning and development play in providing that new type of capability and platform to build those knowledge, skills, and behaviors that are important for tomorrow, today? And who owns that journey?
Sure. So, we hear a lot of words about organizational learning, right? What is organizational learning? And if you look at the definition, it's a process. It's a process to create, retain, transfer knowledge, because the 70-20 rule, 70% of things you learn within the company. I beg to differ a little bit. I don't think it's a process. I think it's a culture. It's not a program. And we as leaders have to start that culture. If we as leaders stand up and say that I need to learn from people, I do not know everything as a leader, that's where the organizational learning starts. So I think it's a culture that needs to be developed of having an open mind, building the team together. So hence I always say organizational learning is turning an organization into a learning organization. Just switch the words around and it becomes a learning organization. Everybody, and sticking with our line, which says the world is our classroom, the organization is our classroom, and I think that's where it starts. It starts from the leaders. It starts from their behavior. But again, as I said, it's a culture. Now, who owns it? All of us own it. It's not necessarily owned by the leader. It's not necessarily owned by the lowest ranked person in the company, because I think there's a lot of equality in it, and we all have to do our part. So that's what I think. I think it's, people talk about organizational learning, building programs, L&D departments go out and hunt for programs that they can do for their leaders. And sometimes the leaders come and say, I want to do this particular program, which is fine. But I think it should be not limited to those days, not limited to those events. I think it's a culture that we need to develop. And to build that culture, we as leaders have to take the lead and then let it go down the organization. And it comes up with a two-way street of learning from each other. So.
Yeah, that we again, isn't it? The we, not me again. Yeah. And it does start with culture. I totally agree with you. And many organizations need to evolve the culture for the modern workplace, a more digitally enabled, particularly distributed, if we're talking about the hybrid workplace as well. And there is a mindset shift first at leadership level. And that has to happen too, but also at employee level. So if those things can all meet in the middle, that's where that stronger together and the we aspect can come in as a becoming that learning organization that you talk about, which is so, so important. And I do agree with you that it is owned by all. And you must see this play out time after time, because yourself, your company, WDHB, along with the acquisition that you mentioned before, Experience to Lead, you have been sort of pioneering innovative and experiential learning programs for over 30 years and constantly evolving those. So how does this and how does what you're doing evolve again if we come back to this emerging new normal, which might be the hybrid workplace?
Right.
And how does that actually impact your own direction as pioneers in the leadership learning industry?
Sure. So, staying with our core value of saying that experiential learning is the core element. Now, with this hybrid world and how we got hit, we kind of head-butted into a brick wall last year. We did not jump on a bandwagon of saying, let's do all virtual. we did create virtual programs. We do virtual programs, but we wanted the virtual programs to be immersive. So we did not stick to one technology. We brought a combination of technologies so that we can make our programs more immersive. And we did not go away from the other element of having them very reflective. Give people time to reflect than actually just talking. So even in this hybrid world, we believe there is immersiveness, but it's in a different form of immersiveness. And we also believe that in this hybrid world, the virtual programs are there to stay. And the face-to-face programs, the desire of human nature or human beings to be able to meet each other and, have a conversation with each other, that will always be there because, we are social. We do want to learn from others and learning, you can learn in classrooms equally well, but what resonates is the environment that you're learning from. Is the environment. That's why immersiveness is that critical. Experiential is that critical. But our shift in our line is also a little bit different. Is again staying with the tagline of "World is a classroom." Even if you're confined to a room because you are sitting in your home office and working in the hybrid world, we do step out and interact with people who are not in our line of business. Well, probably not of our age group, but we should be more observant. I think you need a bigger open mind to learn from the children, kids outside. And I think that learning mindset has to get much wider, has to get much more open. And that's what we're trying to promote in this hybrid world. Keeping the immersiveness, keeping the reflection part, using multiple technologies to bring as much immersiveness as you can bring, whether it's through videos or through interviews or through certain places, because we strongly believe that when the world opens, it's going to open in 3 steps. It's going to open within the city first, within the country next, and then internationally. And each element has its own hybrid level. Each element has its own immersive level. So we need to get more creative in WDHB. We need to look for more interventions in our own city, what people haven't seen before, to learn from. So I think it enhances the creativity. So it's not changing our core beliefs, but we are addressing our core beliefs in different ways than we were doing it in the past.
And those core beliefs take us right back to that very human center again. I love what you were saying there about the immersiveness being central to success here. That's how we learn. It's how we've learned from kids and growing up. So it's learning from life,
right?
As much as learning from work, right? Yeah. And then being able, though, to take a step back and reflect a little bit on that journey. And continue that journey as we're moving into business or different phases through enabling technologies, as you talked about, because now learning is at our fingertips. So that learning organization and the terminology of continuous learning that we've been talking about for many, many years can become a reality and continue to learn from every experience that we do. So in that respect, here's the $64,000 question for you then. So what 2 or 3 pieces of advice would you give leaders who are looking for an upgrade in terms of the knowledge, skills, and behaviors which are most suited to the modern workplace, which will enable them to engage their organization and supercharge growth ahead?
Sure. That is a $64,000 question. It's because everybody sees the world differently. In my mind, the core word that comes in my mind that we talk all the time in our organization to is simplicity. One big lesson we've learned is less is more. And that is so critical for us because a person like me used to travel 9 months in a year on a plane, literally, and haven't traveled for a year and a half. But work is still happening. It's still going on. So less is more. Be simple. And one other thing that I always talk about is humility. Is how humble can you be? If And person as an individual can raise their hand and say, I don't understand, or I don't get it, or I don't know. Because, there is always an answer called no. You don't have to have all the answers. Now, please don't get me wrong. Culturally, it may be a bit different. In certain parts of the world, because the hierarchies and the way organizations are run, you're expected to know everything. And that's where it becomes more challenging to keep the respect and say, I don't know. So I think simplicity, one other thing I would say is be the change. Not just pre-change, but be the change. And I think everything else will follow. Be transparent and be authentic. Be genuine. Use the heart a bit more. Not just the intellectual side, but I think a heart is very important. So believe in yourself that it's kind of a contradicting statement, but believe in yourself that we do not know everything. And that message is something that will take us far. So that would be my advice.
And very powerful advice and very sensible advice in an era where everything looks complicated and complex and the pace of change is so fast. Then to be able to simplify and look at that core and understand what really makes the thing tick and what really makes it move is really important for leaders. And less is more sometimes. I agree in doing that from a leadership perspective. But probably the thing that resonates the most with me here are the two things: the heart, leading with the heart as much as the head. And that goes way back to that human-centered leadership, empathy, all of those things that came out because our organizations need that at the moment. And we probably need that too at the moment as leaders. And sometimes leaders have to have a dose of humility too. Say, you know what, I don't have all the answers, but I bet there's some people in the organization that do, or at least have some ideas.
True. And I think that's the core element of how do you bring, we always talk about empowering our people, allow them to make mistakes, fail fast, fail quick, or, all those phrases. Those are great phrases. Those are great mindsets. But do we really let that happen as leaders? Saying it is one thing, but making it really happen as leaders is the key element. And I think that's where the differentiator is of being a good leader to being a great leader to actually keeping, the company moving forward. And I think we need to step back and reflect. One thing that COVID taught us was self-reflection because it gave us time. And secondly, I think I would end by saying, think about what you're measuring your people on, because you will get what you measure. If you're measuring your people on the right elements, you will get what you want. But if you're measuring them on the wrong elements, like sometimes in the corporate world, it's all about earnings per share. It's not about other elements. So if we can change those things, then.
Yes, you're right. And particularly going back to something else that you said around core purpose and that balance between purpose and profit and measuring differently behaviors in the business as much as performance in the business. You start to do something that really summarizes what you said at the end there, which is leaders can walk the walk as much as talk the talk, and bring people along with them. So what a great place to end. And thank you so much, Sunil, for taking the time out and sharing your experiences and your thinking. Some great food for thought there. And for those listening or watching that would like to know more about yourself or WDHB and some of the amazing learning experiences that you drive, how do they get in touch?
So it's very simple. If they want to get in touch with the company, it's hello@wdhb.com. But if they want to get in touch with me, I'm more than welcome to speak to people, and I can share my email address and reach out, and we would love to hear from everyone. And if we can add any value to people who are listening, then it would be a pleasure to do it. And thank you, Jeremy, for having me. It's been a pleasure. It's always been a pleasure having a conversation with you. So much appreciate that.
Well, thanks very much. And we'll make sure as you're watching this at the end, all of the links are here below on the screen. And so from the moniker hello at WDHB, it's now time to say goodbye to WDHB and to you, Sunil. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for joining our Guest Practices videocast. Please do subscribe to our YouTube channel through the link below, or check out our website to access more in our current series of expert interviews.